pity party here of saying, oh, well, in our academic institutions, we can no longer be hateful and bigoted. Like, this is the opportunity for mixing homophobia and sexism into the diarrhea martini called transphobia. And like, that's what I see here. Is it's here's your worldview, here's new information, now your worldview adjusts, and now you're a better person. Weird.
It is weird.
It's weird.
It's weird. It is weird.
So weird.
Weird.
Well, hello everyone. Flame here. You wouldn't probably guess, but these clips are from the most recent video Rationality Rules put out. I've watched almost every video Rationality Rules has ever put out, and I can recommend his channel wholeheartedly. But there is a but now. Sam Harris once talked about how he can't really make mistakes like his opposition can, because he has created an audience where his honesty and integrity is expected. So when he makes a mistake, his own base is the first one to come pointing it out. This situation is not unlike the one just mentioned. So, Steve has a guest Forrest, and they are reacting to a few Richard Dawkins clips. Let's take a look first what they are reacting to.
It is a very odd phenomenon because I'm used to continua wherever I look. I mean, there's tall versus short, fat versus thin, old versus young. All these things are a smooth continuum. The one thing that isn't is sex. I mean, sex really is binary. There's no question about it. You're either male or female, and it's absolutely clear. You can do it on gamete size, you can do it on chromosomes. And so it is, to me, as a biologist, distinctly weird that people can simply declare, I am a woman, though I have a penis. That seems to me to be a strange distortion of language, because language is useful as something to express your thoughts clearly.
Forrest, my dude, what do you make of what was said there?
It strikes me as odd for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's explaining the reality of biology. There are continua everywhere. There's really, like, there's nothing that you can put into a solid box. Everything is fuzzy. Everything is gray. And he's like, except for this one thing, though. This one thing it has to be this way. And he's backing that up using the categories that we created. And that just, I'm sorry, that's just not good enough.
So mainly I will be responding to the nonsense what Forrest is spouting. Stephen himself didn't say anything too stupid in this episode, but he never addressed any of the mistakes or the venom his guests spat out. So I will do it. But what is Stephen doing? Just imagine not responding to a claim that we created the sex categories. Of course he can't mean that, but without a blink of hesitation, the conversation has already been confused with gender, when the clip clearly didn't discuss that at all, and Forrest never made any work to make the difference. Even the phrasing here is so awful. Everything is gray, except for this one thing. As if Dawkins is addressing that this is the only non-gray area. Dishonest use of language to make the opposition sound more crazy than what was stated. For many this may seem a minor detail, but it actually tells a lot about the person saying it, and nothing about the person he is saying it about. In order to address what Dawkins is talking about, this detail was completely unnecessary, but he emphasized it anyway. You already have the first evidence that this person won't be fair or objective at all.
And then he continues by saying, language is really important for expressing yourself clearly. Yes, I agree. That's why this nuance here is so important, because it's very difficult to express yourself clearly when you only have these two very narrow parochial boxes to work with. You don't get the kind of diversity and the nuance and the interesting nature of language out of that. So, like, he's literally describing how biology works and how language works and how important they are, and then refusing to use that same framework for this one thing. And that's so weird.
It is.
If language is so important, then why are you doing so bad job making it clear? They are talking about sex, and you are complaining that it's bad to only have these two narrow boxes for it? Of course you are already talking about gender here, while never made any work to bridge the gap between. This is exactly the language confusion I see everywhere. People are constantly slipping from biological sex to gender conversation, without any work made to indicate that topic has been changed. So Dawkins is quite right about it in more ways than he even stated here. It is a bit embarrassing to make yourself the example that prove his point correct while you say he is wrong.
How embarrassing.
Just because he didn't address what you wanted him to address doesn't make his point any less valid. So address what he is talking about. Of course you can say that it would be nice if he would also address gender, but you know what? It is a video clip. He didn't already. So it's pretty futile to try rip information out of a video that doesn't have it. What was the definition of insanity again? Trying something over and over expecting a different result. I have no objection for people reacting to out-of-context clips, but then you have to keep your reaction within the boundaries of the damn clip you yourself picked up and stop assigning motives and malice.
So if you're going to criticize someone's view, you have to do it from their perspective. And yeah, what concerns me, or I don't really understand what Richard's doing here, is that I see no effort from Richard to do this. So, like, if someone dismisses the entire transgender movement based on what a fringe of them think about sex, and yes, there are some people that have those views, it's obvious to me that you can't be taking the view seriously. It would be equivalent to just saying, look, Christianity shouldn't be taken seriously at all because, and then just emphasizing and focusing on entirely young Earth creationists.
It doesn't fit who he's been for the past 60 years, and it's weird.
It is weird, but as you said, when it comes to you being a professional, it as a layperson, it genuinely frustrates, let alone makes me confused when I see that he doesn't seem to have any concept of what gender is. And it's how can you be speaking about this so many times and not be able to recognize that that's a position, that is the position on the table? I mean, I still got respect for Richard, but philosophy is not his lane. He really hasn't put in the time and attention. It's just, even if it is the case that the fringe views got it wrong, you've got to deal with the main frame, and he doesn't seem to have any inclination, or there's just nothing there where he's dealing with gender as a separated concept. He's just
right.
But if you're going to critique someone's view, you've got to take their position and show where their position has problems, not impose your view on it.
That is a good point about young Earth creationism not representing the whole group. But why are you not following what you preach? You are reacting to a clip that doesn't contain what you are looking for. And you are the one who presumably selected the clips, did you not? I found the full videos from the description link. And yet you expect him to make some kind of deep philosophical takedown of the whole trans movement? While you are not taking a single step towards understanding where he is coming from, or tackling their point of view, why they are not simply accepting this fed from hand to mouth.
Ironic.
Stephen and Forrest also keep talking about that his entire career has been about educating the public, and they can't empathize with Dawkins here at all, calling everything he does so weird and odd, or that it must be his lack of philosophical sophistication. None of what Dawkins is saying seem weird or odd to me. Remember this clip?
I gratefully accept the rebuke. Just one anecdote to show that I'm not the worst in this thing. A former and highly successful editor of New Scientist magazine, who actually built up New Scientist to great new heights, was asked, "What is your philosophy at New Scientist?" And he said, "Our philosophy at New Scientist is this: science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can fuck off."
He never was particularly good at this. He has always been like this. His attitude has more or less always been, take it or leave it. The difference is that it feels different when he doesn't share the same opinion as you do. And it has nothing to do with philosophical sophistication, as if that is what you need in order to be allowed to object to everything they are objecting to in the full video you clipped. Since you refuse to do due diligence for whatever reason, I will try my best to gather the main points he is actually saying for you, and you can debunk those statements instead. So let's take a look some more of the interview. Underlining. An interview. Dawkins is mostly just listening here.
It was the only sense in which a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man is by saying so. It's a speech utterance. And so I've come to see, I think there are many things happening here. There's things happening in medicine, in politics. But one of the things that's happening is a long run, maybe 2 or 3 century move towards seeing categories and classification as inherently oppressive. So people think, heteronormative is a bad thing, or they think that, the traditional family is constraining. And they miss the point that these things often, like when I say evolved, I don't mean like evolutionary biology. I mean that they came to be over significant amounts of time for a reason, and they're supportive as well as constraining. But everything that's structured or categorized or named or classified, that's now seen as something imposed upon people. So somebody like Judith Butler, for example, who's the queer theorist who wrote Gender Trouble, which is kind of the foundational text that academia uses when looking at these issues, says that gender is an imitation for which there is no original. That she doesn't see sex. She says sex is socially constructed and gender is the real thing. And there isn't any foundation for gender. It's just something that's made meaningful by performing it over and over again. Now, I hadn't come across this at university. As I say, I studied mathematics. And I spent my time proving theorems and defining my terms very carefully. So I was blissfully ignorant of the fact that significant numbers of young people are being taught this sort of nonsense. But they come out of it thinking that somebody who says, look, there are 2 sexes and the sex that you are is the sex that you were conceived as, they think that what you're doing is imposing social roles on them. So I was brought up to think that what was liberatory and what was progressive was to say, well, this little person is a girl. Let's not let her stop. Let's not let that stop her doing anything. She could be an astronaut. She could be president.
Quite. I mean, I think we were all sort of, I was brought up to think that you could do whatever you wanted to. You have the power to, as you said, be an astronaut, be whatever you damn well like. And it's as though this trend now is reverting to stereotyped girls like pink and boys like blue and boys like playing with Meccano sets and girls like playing with dolls. And it's a stereotyping which I kind of revolt against, and yet it seems to be increasingly fashionable.
Absolutely, and it's worse than just the old-fashioned stereotyping that would have said, look, this child is definitely a boy, and if he doesn't like rugby and so on, well, he's a pufter, and let's bully him. It's now saying he's actually a girl.
Yes.
So, there's the pink and the blue boxes have been restructured and remade and reinforced, and a child who doesn't fit into the one that's for the sex that they were, inverted commas, assigned at birth, we have to pop them into the other one. And if you call them out on this, they say, no, that's gender expression, that's gender roles you're talking about. We're talking about gender identity, which is a sort of posited, innate knowing that you pop into the world with. But nobody pops into the world knowing that sort of thing about themselves. Children learn it from the stereotypes. They self-examine and match themselves against the stereotypes. So now we say to little, what we used to call a sissy boy, that little boy now thinks that he's meant to be a girl. And teachers may say that's not what I'm telling him, but it is what they're telling him.
Yes, I was very upset to see evidence from your book and others that teachers and doctors perhaps are latching on to a child who expresses the slightest doubt about this and then affirms them as being the opposite gender to their sex.
I mean, it's worse than that they latch onto it. They suggest sell it.
Yes.
These books for 2 and 3 and 5-year-olds that say you must examine your gender.
I'm perfectly happy to address a trans person by their preferred name and preferred pronouns. I think it's just a matter of politeness, really. What I object to is the insistence that I am a woman. I mean, you're not a woman. I'm perfectly prepared to call you she if you like, and call you whatever your preferred name is. But to say I am a woman is a debauching of language, and that's where I draw the line.
I've become much more hardline on this, and I would like not to be. I would have started where you are. But what I've learned is that somebody who expects to be called she also expects the words woman and female, and mother, and sister, and daughter.
So he is being told about gender as well. Look what you can find if you watch the full video. From what I gathered, he is mainly objecting to the following issues. 1. That people are not actually literally changing their sex, because that happens to be the fact of the matter. You can call them fringe group, but they do exist. Stephen admits to this while Forrest flat out denies this.
Dismisses the entire transgender movement based on what a fringe of them think about sex. And yes, there are some people that have those views.
And that men just become women by just declaring that they are. And then the other guy's like, that's clearly delusional. It's like, yeah, that's why nobody's saying any of that. Nobody's making those arguments.
Sure, we don't define Christians by young earth creationists, but Dawkins has talked about young earth creationists as well and debunked their claims. 2. Use of language. Dawkins has grown up that woman means adult human female, where female refer to biological sex. So the language is getting confused on purpose by Stephen himself as well.
In fact, let me make something as clear as I possibly can. While I very much believed, and still believe, that there's a discussion to be had about the fairness of allowing women who have experienced male puberty to compete against women who haven't, Laurel is a woman. Period.
And even in the Congress.
Conversations, we're conflating sex and gender, and I do want to affirm here that trans women are women. That is their gender.
Are these people fringe, or is the language redefinition just mainstream now? My speculation of the motive behind this is that, for example, trans women, it is hurtful if they are not referred to as real women. So the line is blurred in order to show compassion and make their lives better. But it doesn't change the fact that the language is being confused. 3. These ideas don't live in a vacuum. They affect the young, and you can't know all the ramifications this will have in a long run. 4. Even talking about these bad side effects that this ideology produces, people are immediately been shouted down as transphobes and bigots before even engaging in the conversation. There are a few extracted points I don't think Dawkins would disagree with, and frankly, I don't either. What did he say that was wrong exactly? Stevens and Forrest criticism is about what he didn't say, rather than what he did say. You will need to have a conversation with Dawkins about gender if he is even willing to listen. My guess is that he is not particularly interested in gender at all, and the reason is that he is almost a century old. When he was young, I believe this was more like how issues like this used to be handled. But I feel like, shut up, we have more important issues to worry about.
Oh, well, somebody did say to me, actually, after The Selfish Gene was published, that he couldn't sleep for 3 nights after he read it. And another man told me that a Canadian professor said that a young woman student of his came in to him in tears having read The Selfish Gene because it made her feel that her life was meaningless. I mean, my inclination there is to say, well, tough. Maybe your life is meaningless, but you need to change the way you look at your life because what's true can't be changed. I'm reminded of the 18th century wit, I forget who it was, a lady said, I accept the universe. And he said, by gad, she'd better. That was one of my sort of first
first reaction, but actually accepting the universe, accepting the truth of the universe, accepting the truth about life. Bleak as it may be, there is a nobility. You stand up and face into the keen wind of the truth. And I think that is a noble and an actually aesthetically pleasing thing to do anyway. So I don't want to hide from the truth. I think that the truth can be hard, but there is nobility in accepting it. And
I'm not saying if that is how it should be, or even should have been, but even there is an argument to be had. Our parents were made out of tougher stuff, and they were not as pampered as we are. Being too kind can make children too weak to handle the curveballs life will eventually throw at them. Despite this modern society that shelters us so well, we are still in a hostile environment. Just imagine a major disaster to strike this current generation. I predict that the language policing would disappear very quickly, because we would then have more important things to worry about. But that is not to say it is not appropriate for this current situation. Maybe disaster will never strike and we can create some kind of utopia? Just saying that sentence out loud made me sense many pessimistic and skeptical stares.
Put it this way, I do think that there is something of a de facto blasphemy situation going on where if you express a view that's not with what's, the mainframe, then you will suffer some pretty harsh consequences. Not always, but often the case. And it's worse, as it should be, for professionals compared to lay people. So I do think there is an element of truth for that. And for what it's worth, I think that this really hasn't helped when it comes to promoting, trans people. I think that the right has, or those that are opposed to trans people, they have got hold of this and rinsed it for its money.
I can agree that this might be used for bad purposes as well. There are anti-trans people out there. But does that mean he is not allowed to say what he is saying if he believes he is conveying the truth? Also, did they really need a biologist to inform them that there are only two sexes? Dawkins doesn't really say anything very profound on the subject. But what I don't agree that he should be punished for this even if he is professional. Did you deserve this?
It is with great sorrow that I make this video, but I haven't really got a choice. But once I left the ACA's warm hospitality to fly back to England, their board of directors released a public statement denouncing me as transphobic and heavily implied that I'm opposed to the LGBT+ community.
You nor Dawkins are working out of malice or are evil people. I hardly ever claim to know anything, but I claim to know that. You both are working for a better world, and neither of you know all the right answers right now. So in my eyes, both of you are on level playing ground. If Dawkins needs to be punished for his views, then so should you. My take on this is that keep talking without a fear of punishment, because I actually want to know what you think. This punishment threat will cloud and steer the judgment of many intellectuals. We are in danger of steering the plane with the help of hijacker with a gun, if this is what is allowed to happen. And I don't mean that criticism is punishment. I mean that people are trying to get others fired and harassed, calling people with names that demonizes them and try to shun them from the good graces of society. And you yourself know this perfectly well. You've been through this before. I, for one, have somewhat an allergy to threats. Just makes my blood boil. I'm afraid it will automatically steer my judgment against the one who is issuing the threat. What if they are right and issuing a threat at the same time? Just drop the threats and concentrate on the issue, is my subtle recommendation.
As a communicator of science, that sometimes how you say something is more important than what you're actually saying.
Yeah,
and sometimes
How it should be said. On some level, I might even agree because I've noticed that a lot of people really are concerned about how things are being said. But on the other hand, I'm a bit conflicted on this because to me it seems like you are talking down on people. I believe directness is kindness. As long as you are not wasting your words on useless insults and are trying to convey the truth as best you can, I think that is showing respect. If I were on the receiving end of what was just said, I would take it as the biggest disrespect you could ever hurl at me. You can't handle the truth, so I need to soften it for you, so you can digest it, like a parent feeding a child. And Forrest really should take a note on this communication point. He is wasting so much words on basically being a bully. Let's count the sins.
The difference between those two things, again, I can't stress this enough, it's not a new development. It's been around for over half a century. In fact, almost at this point, because we're in the 2020s now, almost a whole century, almost 100 years.
Sin number 1, forceful argument. As if this is hundreds years old and you should have been on the wagon years ago. The age of an idea has nothing to do with the level of acceptance it has.
Of understanding that there's a difference here. And he's just using the language that he grew up using, the language he's gotten away with using this whole time.
Sin number 2. Assignment of malice. Gotten away with using. Seriously. Chilling words. Gotten away with. That directly implies that Dawkins is a bad person for using language he grew up with.
As a professional content creator, it sounds like somebody who is on their own podcast, speaking to their own base, who they already knows agrees with them, and so he doesn't have to put in the hard work of making a really compelling argument or putting in a lot of thought.
Sin number 3. Assignment of motivations. You are not the only one who could play this game. Everyone could come to your videos and dismiss all of your work with these same words. You don't even believe in what you say. You are simply pandering to your base. Simply a dumb and repulsive remark.
We are only talking about trans women. Always. Yep. And for me, I see that just because this is the opportunity for mixing homophobia and sexism into the diarrhea martini called transphobia. And like that's what I see here is it's much easier to build a straw man with, oh, it's just a man in a dress.
Sin number 4. Demonizing your opposition. It is amazing to me that Forrest is saying this to a person who previously received this very same kind of attack, but he said nothing about it here. Spitting hate has no place in rational discussion.
That is what's setting people back in terms of feminism, is saying, no, if you're a woman, you have to do XYZ thing, rather than women are diverse, women are interesting, women have a lot of different ways of being women, and women are all fucking awesome. Like, that should be the answer. That should be the way.
Sin number 5. Being too cheesy. Okay, I admit. Many of you might not count this, but I do. Even just for fun. I just personally found that to be so cringe. Like, we need you to explain that women are awesome, and that should be the answer. Oh God.
Oh God! Why didn't anybody tell me?
And you can't say it anymore. You can't say that there's just two sexes anymore. You can't say, like, dude, say what you want to say. Say what you... No one's stopping you. No one's holding you back. Say something.
Sin number 6. Mocking a straw man. You are saying this, with this tone of voice to Richard Dawkins, who just said what he wanted to say. If you are talking about the colleagues, then you are pretending not to know the potential ramifications. Either way, in my opinion, this style of communication is absolutely repulsive.
Oh, I'm going to plant my flag on this spot, and I'm going to die on this hill, and no matter what, I'm not going to adjust, and I'm not going to change my mind, and I'm not going to update my information, and I'm not going to, listen to my audience, and I'm not going to... It's just, this is what I think, and this is all it is. It's a very dogmatic approach.
Sin number 7. Forceful beating down a straw man. With forceful, I mean that all the language here presumes you are already correct. This is a rhetorical trick to pander to the feelings of someone sharing your feeling, and it has no place in rational argumentation. Your opposition could say the exact same thing about you, and then it is nothing but a shouting match.
Pity party here of saying, oh, well, in our academic institutions, we can no longer be hateful and bigoted.
Sin number 8. Demonizing your opposition with mockery. I can't believe how slimy this guy is.
Be more open to new evidence and new ways of thinking, not less. For you to come in here and say, like, we as academics and scientists and everything, we need to be protected from all this new thinking and all these new ideas and these people who are going to, tell us that we're bad people and take away our funding and take away our jobs if we offend too many people. Like, you're just talking about doing the same job you've been doing this whole time.
Sin number 9. Threatening a straw man. For you to come in here is very combative language, like Dawkins just barged in your personal space to say something awful. They are aware of this gender issue. Just because he didn't address it doesn't mean they are simply protecting themselves from the new think.
He knows how to argue religion real well. So if he can make this thing sound like religion, even though that isn't what anybody's doing, then he can very clearly argue it and knock down that straw man real easy.
Sin number 10. Assigning motivation and malice. You make it sound like he just wants to attack trans people by improving his argument by drawing it back to religion because he is very good at it. To me, that doesn't sound even plausible. Not on any level of analysis. What if he simply recognized a pattern and told us about it?
That is like a Fox News, like, they're saying that you have to be ashamed of being white and guilty about that, and that your body literally changes magically, and that men just become women by just declaring that they are, and then the other guy's like, that's clearly delusional. It's like, yeah, that's why nobody's saying any of that. Nobody's making those arguments.
Sin number 11. Overstating your case. This may sound like a nitpick since most people are not making those arguments, but I wanted to add it here because of how this presented. I just can't get the visual out of my mind that you are selling a broken car to me.
Here's your worldview. Here's new information. Now your worldview adjusts, and now you're a better person.
Sin number 12. Demonizing people who disagree with you. I find this to be so stupid it is kind of funny. The whole context doesn't make it much better. Even if someone hears the gender concept and ignores it, does that make him a worse person? maybe less knowledgeable, but how this is phrased is clearly here to tell that people who don't agree with me are bad people. If that is not what you want to communicate, then work on your communication skills that just radiate dishonesty in almost every breath you take.
If everybody was saying the things that Dawkins was saying here, I would also disagree with them. But nobody's saying those things.
Sin number 13, being too generous towards your side. No one is saying this, and you would only agree if everyone was saying it. Everything about your argumentation aims to stack all the cards on your side and not even let the opponent have cards that belong to them. You try to cheat wherever you can as much as you can. Seriously, if you think about it, this statement basically is saying, I agree with Dawkins, and still you just spent almost half an hour berating him. This wasn't even everything, but you get the point. One of the most dishonest people I've seen in a long time, and gives dishonest D'Souza a run for his money. Why Stephen was unable to detect any of this? Even if you agree with someone's position, it doesn't mean you can't tell them not to argue in bad faith.
If you say something stupid or shitty or cruel or hateful or whatever, you're going to pay some social capital.
Sometimes I might agree that you should pay a price for saying stupid things, but for good reasons. If you continuously make bad faith arguments, demonize people who disagree, mock and ridicule them while strawmanning them. Yeah, I think more people should switch the channel when Forrest is on. If you watch the full video, then you can still find Stephen taking more care about considering the actual opposition he is facing, but Forrest does none of that. Stephen's biggest sin was to dismiss or ignore Forrest's. You will never find me doing this. Even if it is my closest friend, I would without hesitation call them out on this kind of behavior. That is what it means to have rock-solid integrity that I would expect from a person like Stephen as well. You can agree with all of Forrest's statements for all I care, but still not let slide all the venom he constantly spits out from his mouth. For example, like mostly caring about trans women issue is just homophobia cocktail? What if they are worried and trying to protect women like their natural instincts are telling them to? Wouldn't that be a more plausible explanation? Or isn't it just demonizing enough to dishonestly and forcefully ram home your point of view? The lack of empathy is palpable. I can empathize with Forrest's position. Why can't he lend any of the same courtesy for his opposition? Like, I don't think the language confusion is done in the name of malice. I get that. What if your opposition told you that you are trying to confuse the language because you are a nihilistic troll and just want to see what you can get away with and see if you can destroy the Western society by spreading madness? Yeah, my suggestion is not to play that game. Be better. The way Forrest conducts himself is similar to Donald Trump in a sense that he conveys unwavering confidence while talking so much shit. He spends most of his talking time just berating others who disagree with him, and it takes ages to get anything resembling an argument. And even after all of that straw man beat down, at the very end of it, he says he agrees with the little point Dawkins made. It is unbelievable. I will make another video about going into more close detail to the actual arguments and evidence he finally does provide in the most recent video. It will just usually take like 30 minutes of rambling to get there, and there are some notes I'm taking as well. I actually needed to adjust some of my previous thinking due to the evidence provided. Yes, that is unapologetic flexing I wish others could exercise more often as well. I listened to a slimy, dishonest person and adjusted my views despite finding the guy despicable. I'm willing to learn from anyone, and I'm not suggesting that Forrest is evil, even if he is the slimiest communicator of science I've ever heard. Just imagine Carl Sagan talking this way. Nope, I can't even imagine Sagan talking in this manner. I miss him. It just seems like Forrest has a big ball of thick liquid bias around this issue. I will show some evidence from another show. I listened to The Line because I like to listen Matt Dillahunty from time to time, and bumped into a clip like this when Forrest was on.
I consider myself to have more liberal interpretations, and since I don't believe in some gay people and such. This is less so a theological question about the validity of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, etc., but more about how politically feasible it would be to theologically reform the Islamic world.
What did you just
say?
Yeah,
I have no idea, but I have no reason to think it's likely. Go ahead, Forrest.
I didn't hear what you said. You were more left-leaning or more liberal.
He wants to know, is Islam reformable?
I'm a liberal, but I'm not.
No. I heard that. I heard that. It's just when you were explaining it, you said you're more liberal in certain things, and then you said something very quickly after that. And I know what I thought I heard.
Who happens to have liberal views on theism.
Okay.
So I don't believe in fundamentalism.
I could have sworn you said something fucking nuts, and I'm just going to move on. I apologize for wasting your time. So you go on now.
Okay. Yeah, so I was asking, do you think it'll ever be possible to
onto social relevance. But at the end of the day, it's still a religion. It's still a dogma, and it's unlikely it's going to change too strongly. Now, I have to ask you, I can't get away from the fact, I'm 99% sure I heard you say this. What do you believe that gay people exist? I swear to God, you said I don't believe in gay people.
I don't believe, no, I said I'm liberal because I don't believe in stoning gay people if homosexuality is immoral.
Doesn't believe in stoning.
It's immoral. Is immoral. That's the whole, half the chat agreed with me. We all heard you say, I don't believe in gay people. And I just had to know before we moved on any further with this call. I thought you said gay people weren't real, or that you didn't believe in them, or you didn't listen to them. I was going to lose it. Okay, you don't believe in stoning them. I agree. Great. Okay, cool.
Yes.
He just could not stop thinking about if the guy said something crazy about gays even after saying he will just move on. He could not move on, and describes himself that he would have lost it if he had said that. Matt didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. But he can hear things. And he just went into chat to solve if someone caught if the caller said something he could police. He is a fucking hound.
What did you say? What did you say to me?
I'm sorry. Shit. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it.
Say it. Say it.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Whatever his issue is, it is making his mind just see red when these issues come up, and can't help but attack anyone he sees as an enemy. This must be the very definition of a social justice warrior, and this one is on a crusade. There will be no prisoners taken, and all the heads of heretics will fall. I would suggest that seeing that red makes you blind, and you will make more mistakes like that. There were some comments about Stephen should never talk to people like Forrest, but I disagree with that. I think Stephen should be allowed to even talk to Hitler if he could. I just don't think Stephen should be laughing along Hitler when he talks about gassing the Jews. I would simply make a subtle suggestion that people who disagree with you are not evil, and they just might have some legitimate concerns. The key takeaway I would wish everyone would take away from this is that neither side is truly evil. I would say that most people are reacting the way they do because they have legitimate concerns, and this goes both ways. It does not help to pretend that people who disagree with you are evil. What is the likelihood that you get so much pushback on this subject, and none of it is legitimate? That all who opposes all your policies are simply evil, and you need to talk to them like this? It sure used to be easy when it was just about arguing religion, but now that there is no clear-cut answer, it becomes a lot more messy. That is the worst place to let your arrogant overconfidence roam free. There was a saying I saw somewhere that said, "There are no solutions, only compromises." And I think that explains the level of heat on this issue quite well. Because it is no longer as simple as it was with religion, the first thing you should finally learn is to control your inner demon. Have you been pampered too long with easy questions, so you can't handle the more difficult ones? Anyway, I delve into this more in the next video and finally lay out my non-solution to this problem. Why a non-solution? Well, you'll find out if you stick around. I promise it won't be completely useless insight, even if I call it a non-solution myself. The main point of this video was just pointing out some of the awful conduct in one of my favorite shows, and I wish Stephen will see this and improve. I have less faith with Forrest. He seems more like a guy set on his ways and is ready to disown even Stephen if he starts to pull the leash a little bit too hard. I will show more evidence of that in my next episode. It will be absolutely crazy. The pressure is almost touchable by hand.
People should be thanking Christ that I am who and what I am because you need me. You need me to save you. You do. I am the only one who possibly can. You're not the real heroes. I'm the real hero.